the Food Research and Action Center. And this webinar is a P-EBT deep dive into the current school year 2021-2022. Next slide. So just a little bit about the Pandemic-EBT program. It was created in March of 2020 and provides an EBT card to purchase food at retailers that accept SNAP benefits. It's designed to provide nutrition resources to families to replace their meals in a time of school closures, or in the case of the last school year, hybrid options and virtual options. So in the fall of 2020, P-EBT was extended and expanded to provide benefits to school-aged children for days or hours missed this school year, and children under the age of 6 whose households participate in SNAP when school or their childcare is closed. P-EBT was also expanded to cover summer of 2021. Next slide. So for P-EBT for the current school year, guidance was released in the summer of 2021. And it's very similar to previous guidance. The new daily benefit level is $7.10 for the contiguous United States, and $11.44 for Alaska, and $8.28 for Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Similar eligibility criteria is utilized this school year as it was last school year. Those states are now being asked to address quarantining students and COVID-related absences, both of which I'm hoping our panelists will be able to touch on throughout this conversation. Currently, USDA is in a spot of asking states to decouple childcare plans from school-age plans, asking them to only submit their school-age plans currently for acceptance, as they are running into some issues with childcare plans that we are hoping that they will work out as soon as possible. And also for summer of 2022, guidance is forthcoming, though it is still required that states have a school year plan in order to give out summer 2022 benefits. So a state must have an approved P-EBT plan for P-EBT in summer of 2022. And next slide. So I'd really like to now introduce our panelists. Don Sweeney from the Michigan Department of Human Services and Betsy Suber from Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. They're both going to talk about their approved P-EBT plans, and then talk a little bit about some of the challenges that they faced. And I think we're going to start with Don. So Don, if you want to unmute, turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Don Sweeney, and as they said, I am the SNAP State Administrator for the Department of Health and Human Services in Michigan. I oversee all of our food assistance programs other than the lunch school programs, which are under our Department of Education. We have a really great partnership with them, and that's part of what has helped us have an easier approval plan. The first year, it was very easy. Michigan was the first state to submit their plan. We were the first state approved, and we were one of the first states to issue. It was very straightforward. We took all the kids that were on the list for free and reduced meals, or community eligibility, or the National School Lunch Program, and we paid them. We paid about 940,000 children in the first year. The second year was a little more difficult for us, and we had some roadblocks. In the second year, FNS required more detail because you had to determine whether a child was in school or not before you made the payment. It wasn't just lump sums to all the students because we knew schools were open and some were closed. And in Michigan, we have legislation that does not allow our Department of Education to ask schools for additional information beyond the bare minimum. So we did not have what some other states have, where they could get the schools to send them child level information. So after a lot of work together, we created a survey, a monthly survey, in which the schools go in and they indicate their predominant modality, whether it was in person, hybrid, or completely virtual. And then we matched that to the free and reduced meal students that they had in their school, and we provided our payments based on that, with the schools providing a survey, answering the survey every other month for us. So that went well once we figured it out. We also created a reconsideration process because FNS was concerned that we would miss students by using the highest modality for each school. So our reconsideration process is a form that's available on our website where a parent who maybe has a child who was in a school but was out of school more than the school was reporting. So maybe the school is hybrid, but this child is completely virtual due to COVID concerns. They could submit that and verification from the school, and then we would review that and increase their benefit accordingly. So when it came to this new fiscal year, we created a program very similarly. We indicated that we would still do the survey. The schools would tell us their modality. We would use the reconsideration process. And FNS came back with a lot of questions. It was almost as if we had to start from scratch and hadn't been building on the past 2 years. So that was definitely a struggle. They questioned things that they had approved before. And we had to do a lot of rethinking of how they wanted things. There was a lot of concern about how we would ensure that we were only giving the amount of benefits out. And with the fact that, you know, at least right now, most schools are in person and they're either maybe having a classroom closed for a week or so, or maybe one of their buildings, whereas before we had mass closures and it was much easier to get your arms around that. So here we had to do a lot of work in our plan to identify how we would work with the schools to answer that survey and get us as much information as possible. We also are continuing our reconsideration process, which I think is something that helped us get our approval. So in Michigan, if your school is not reporting correctly or they're missing your child's needs and maybe your child is virtual for COVID reasons, you can still do the reconsideration process and we will review that. We have our call center staff review those and make decisions on approval after getting verification from the school. So that is really what I think helped push us through. FNS did require us to reevaluate the payments that we created. We did simplified assumptions on the payments based on what we thought a hybrid school would be. And in this case, we defined hybrid as a school that was open but closed at some point in time in the month. Because in Michigan, the schools are not allowed to go hybrid any longer. So they're either virtual or in person. So for us, the hybrid this year is considered a school that has changed that modality at any point in time in the month. But FNS wouldn't allow us to use those simplifying assumptions. So we had to develop a number of days that we would use for approval for a school that's closed versus just making a simplified assumption. And that was definitely a barrier for us. Otherwise, you know, what we found was interesting was that it was almost as if we had a whole new set of eyes reviewing the plan. And, you know, when you submit state plans to FNS, you know, you'll submit them the same way for years, and then somebody new will look at it and they have all different questions and all different concerns. And that's what I felt here was that it was brand new eyes looking at it. So some of the things that we had established and thought were kind of commonplace and a common practice with FNS in the past 2 years were really being reviewed and questioned. So it took a lot of back and forth. I have to say that we communicated with FNS maybe 6 different times before we got to an assumption of a consensus that they were happy with. The other thing is that in Michigan, you know, our Department of Education gathers the information for the eligible children, but they don't gather that until December. So we aren't able to issue payments until February or March at the earliest because we have to pull those files and do the matching and get the system ready to go. So it is difficult to do a retro payment in that way, but that's really the only way we can do it based on how the Department of Ed pulls their reports. And that took some conversation with FNS as well to ensure that we would be able to pay back to September, but we wouldn't issue those benefits until you know, February or March. And that was something else that they questioned, even though we had done it the previous years as well. So I think that's really what I have to say. They were very helpful, but it was a lot of questioning, a lot of going back over things that we thought we had resolved in the previous year. You know, there's a lot of concern about the consistency and how those payments would look, as well as how we would handle children that fell out of that norm with the school. So FNS was very happy about our reconsideration process. I think they've talked about it in other meetings. We have a website that has the form that we allow to use, and they can use it every time we issue a payment. They can use it to indicate that they feel their child has a different need. And then we have to have staff that review that and verify. So that's me. I can talk more. I can answer questions, but that's kind of the nutshell of what we did.
Great, thank you, Dawn. So we will move to Betsy, and then we will do questions and answers at the end. So if you want to, in the meantime, be putting any questions in the Q&A function, we will answer them at the end. So Betsy?
Hi, my name is Betsy Suber. Sorry, I was trying to start my video, but it doesn't seem to be working. I am with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, and I'm over the SNAP and TANF policy. And I had the great pleasure of working on our P-EBT program. And from the beginning, we have always gone with student level data from the schools. We've never used simplifying assumptions, and that kind of worked out in our favor considering the new guidance this year where they really wanted to get to, you know, the actual days that the children are at the school. And I think FNS was a little bit harder on the use of simplifying assumptions. And so, you know, I think we always steered away from them because we didn't want to deal with the back and forth with FNS, but also because our schools from the very beginning have always just done the student level data submissions, and we kept building an online portal with that understanding. And so it just kind of got easier with each what we call round of guidance for P-EBT. So it kind of kept the schools you know, on the same cadence, and it kept our families on the same cadence too. Like you would know for each day that your child was out of school for, you know, remote learning or COVID absences, that would be the number of days you got benefits for. Our vendor has done a really great job building that portal, and it's made the submission process for schools a lot easier. So we collect the data from the schools every month, and we issue retroactively by 1 month. So, you know, in November, we collected October data and issued in the October benefit in November. And then for December, we collected the November data and issued the November benefit in December. And what we have also done with this recent new guidance or this round of P-EBT, based on retailer feedback, they had indicated that, you know, they couldn't have the best shelves stocked when everybody got the benefit on the same day. So we began staggering our issuances based on the last name of the child, based on how many days are left in the month, because we don't always issue our benefits on the same exact date every month. It really determines on, is dependent on what kind of batch processes we have going on with emergency allotments for SNAP and such. And when we issue the benefits, we also issue a notice to the families to let them know the child got a benefit for what month and how much. And then let's see, I think our biggest challenge really is for the schools to do that student level data. You know, we do hear back from them that it is, you know, a big lift, but we also know that, you know, over time they've become accustomed to it. And, you know, if a student is on a certain schedule, they kind of can know that for every day. And we know they have to kind of keep track of the COVID absences. Also, speaking to COVID absences, we allow the schools to determine what is considered a COVID absence in accordance with their school established COVID policy. So we decided as a state not to make that determination, but really leave it up to, you know, those on the ground. And the other thing with online schooling, you know, that was, I think, a bit of a struggle for both families and schools this time around, because so many people were doing remote learning and automatically, I think, assumed that an online school would qualify for P-EBT this year. And so we really worked with schools and trying to get the word out to families as to what would be considered an online school. And for us, we really looked at kind of 4 4 or 5 things. We have these certain numbers for each school. So we look to see if they were separate and distinct numbers from the school buildings in the district. We also look if it's a permanent option in place beyond COVID. And then do students have the option to show up in person at a school building? And if the school is even eligible to operate. They're just remote learning. The way to look at that, we told the school was like, is this only an option due to COVID? Is the child still enrolled in the physical school building? Are students eligible to receive free and reduced price meals through the school? And then if whenever the school decides learning. So that was how we tried to clarify it to the schools. But I think the biggest thing was whether or not they were actually running a national school lunch program. That was, you know, some parents, I think, didn't realize that when they were signing some of their children up for this. And I would agree with Dawn when she talked about submitting the plans, especially this time, that it, you know, it was definitely, it felt like a new round of review when, you know, things were perfect before, and then all of a sudden you're getting questioned and pushed back and having to make some changes. So it was a little surprising, and you know, we rolled with it and made the changes they needed, and you know, eventually got that approval. And I think that is all I have.
This is Dawn. I just wanted to add that for the second year, the first year, if a family had multiple children in the school, we matched them up and gave one card. For the second year, we ended up giving anybody who is non-food assistants already, not having an open case, we gave each child their own card because we found there was a lot of discrepancy in what the school information had for addresses for siblings and shared custody. So the second time around, we gave a card for each child, which is a little more cost for us, but it was much simpler on disputes and concerns and wrong addresses. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Dawn, we did the same thing too. I'm glad you brought that up. And we always went with the address on file with the school.
Yes, we did too.
Because, you know, Dawn, I'm sure you guys were experiencing too. People will call, like, that's not where, you know, my child is or where we live. But, you know, we could only go with what we had through the schools.
Yep. Our call center staff spent a lot of time correcting addresses and
yep.
School to make sure they're corrected. Yeah.
Great, Naomi, can you go to the next slide? So just wanted to put in here a couple of resources that FRAC has. We are hopefully going to be getting a more updated communications toolkit out in the new year. But here are a list of materials. We have customizable P-EBT outreach materials for once your state is approved. And we also have the communications resources shared drive, which includes sample outreach materials. And of course, these are all from last year, but can be adapted for this year. Next slide. All right, so we are going to start with our question and answer session. We have a few that have come in already. All right, so we're going to start with October data. I think this is for Betsy. So October data would be reported in November, and children will receive the October P-EBT allotment within that 10-day window in November.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if our window was exactly 10 days, but yes, whatever our window ended up being, they will their benefits will be available during that window for October.
Great. The next one is, it looks like Dawn already answered it in the chat, but Betsy, are you guys collecting data on unused or unpinned cards? And if so, are you contacting the families about why they're not using them?
No, we are not.
This is Dawn. We do get a lot of calls from families who are unsure about it or don't know what it is. So they call our call center and we do answer that way, but we're not actively tracking them down.
Okay, so the next one is for Dawn. Could Michigan expand a little on what FNS would allow once they told them no simplified assumptions? I think this is more,
Sure.
yeah, the individual level data, lack of individual level data.
So we were able to submit several simplified some assumptions, and one of them was that we would go with the school modality. So the school will report what their common modality is, because we had the reconsideration process. So if a school is only 10% remote, they're going to report that, and we would look at the school as in person. And then those individuals would then send the reconsideration into us, and we would handle them that way. The other assumption that we had was that we would, if a school closed in the middle of the month or at any time in the month, we would consider that a hybrid school and make a payment based on the days that they closed in order to serve those individuals. We originally had set amounts that we determined for hybrid, but FNS is making us now look at the number of days the school says they were closed and only pay for that. So there was some compromise, but not as much as I would have liked.
I have another question here about, and it's for both of you, if both of you want to take a turn answering it. How do you ensure that all schools are responding to either the survey or updating their data?
That is a bit of a struggle. We have a program manager on this, and part of what she does is she monitors the surveys and we send out reminders. We have a internal group of leadership at each school or each school district, and we use the intermediate school district leadership, and they would forward that down to their schools. So the first time last year, we identified a key contact or two in each school so that they would complete the survey. We provided training to those individuals, and they were the individuals that we would call when we didn't get the survey. And we would say, do you need some help? Do you have any questions? The public schools got on pretty quickly. The private schools and some of the charter schools required us to do a bit more hand-holding for them, but that seemed to work well for us. And near the end of the year, we were getting a better response and had less schools to reach out to.
We have kind of not the same process, but a similar in the fact that we have a list of all schools, and our vendor can quickly see who has submitted and not submitted, and then we can send those reminders to them to submit their data. And also the families will pressure them into submitting as well. I mean, it's a great external force. So after we do our reminders, usually it's the parents who are like, we didn't get our benefits yet. So that helps too.
Indeed. Yeah, that pressure does help a lot.
But yeah, we haven't come across that lately. I think it was really at the beginning when the schools were like, what? What's going on? So, but yeah, it's gotten better.
Great. Yeah, I know that we, a lot of this is also put on school districts, so having that external pressure is definitely helpful. So the next question is, why do you think FNS's approach shifted between the 2 years? Did the reconsideration process become more strict due to perceived lessening of the crisis?
Well, I feel that FNS is probably feeling a lot of pressure from whoever they report to into the legislature to make sure they're using this money correctly. We're just not willy-nilly throwing benefits out. And I think FNS probably got some feedback because we had many questionable cases in which, we had to make decisions on who the child really lived with. And so I think they felt that from us as well, from the states, because at least in Michigan, the reporting to the schools is a bit abysmal by parents. They'll put their kid's address on the beginning of the year on the free and reduced lunch application, but then they don't change it or update it if they move or if the child moves to a different parent. So what we found was that information was very flawed, and then we'd have to go work through that. And I think FNS heard that from us. So I think they were trying to be a bit preemptive about that issue. The consideration actually has stayed the same. It's a pretty solid consideration form. It requires a parent to complete the form and then to provide us verification from the school. whether it's the school schedule being printed out or a document email from the school secretary, when we have a variety of verifications that we accept on our website. And we also have a relationship with those contacts. So we can call and say, we don't understand what you're saying here, or can you verify that this is actually accurate? So that has really helped us as well.
I mean, I agree with Dawn, and I think in the responsibility to I think good stewardship over tax dollars. I think some simplifying assumptions that were used before were maybe, you know, people were getting benefits that maybe weren't necessary, like for meals skipped. So I think they wanted a little more accountability in that. But I think that was the biggest drive.
Great, thank you. We have one more question about the reevaluation form for Michigan. So does the reevaluation form cover COVID-related absences? So if a single student is quarantining, can their parents fill that out and try to get benefits for the time that they are out of school?
Yep, they can, and they will need to get verification from the school that that is accurate. So yes, we do allow that. Mm-hmm.
Great. I know a lot of states are grappling with the issue of how to rectify missed cases, and that seems like a good example of something that they can look at doing. So thank you for sharing about that. We are coming up to the end of our time. I do want to be very respectful of our panelists' time and all of our participants' time. So thank you all so much for joining us. Hopefully in the new year, we'll be able to put a few more of these on to keep the ball rolling and try to get more states approved for P-EBT plans for the 2021-2022 school year. So thank you all so much. Thank you to our panelists. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and my email will be in the PowerPoint presentation that we send out after this webinar is over. So have a great holiday, everybody.